Welcome to the Dark Time Stories. Tonight, we look into the one place where we are entirely honest and entirely vulnerable, our search bar. But what happens when you open your browser and the recent history is filled with disturbing queries you never typed? Turn down your lights and let's look at the logs. I have always been a bit of tech enthusiast. I am the guy my friends and family call whenever their Wi-Fi drops or their computer catch a virus. Naturally, when I moved into my first apartment, the very first thing I did was set up a high-end independent home network. I installed a commercial grade router that tracked every single byte of data coming in and out of the apartment. My name is Leo. At the time, I was working from home as a freelance data analyst, which meant I spent almost 18 hours a day glued to my dual monitor setup. Because I lived alone, my network logs were usually incredibly boring. Just my own IP address connecting to work servers, streaming platforms, and food delivery apps until October of last year. It was a chilly overcast Thursday afternoon. I was reviewing our monthly data backups when I noticed an anomaly in my router's administrative dashboard. The bandwidth usage for the past 3 days had completely spiked between the hours of 3 am and 4 am. During those exact hours, I was always dead asleep. At first, I thought a neighbor had somehow cracked my complex Wi Fi password. I opened up the network log, which records the exact search queries and website traffic generated by every device connected to my router. I filtered the logs by the timestamp 3:14 am. There was a device listed under a generic unidentifiable hardware code. It wasn't my phone and it wasn't my laptop. I pulled up the exact Google search history generated by this mysterious device. The very first search query made me laugh out loud. It read, "How many doors are locked in this house?" I shook my head, thinking it was a clever prank. Maybe one of my tech savvy friends had remotely accessed my network just to mess with me. I scrolled down to the next search, made us just 2 minutes later at 3:16 am. Leo bedroom window, lock orientation. The laugh died in my throat. My name is relatively common, but seeing my own phone coupled with the exact mention of my bedroom window made my stomach twist into a tight knot. I kept scrolling. The searches from that night continued, spaced exactly 2 minutes apart. How loud is the third floorboard from the stairs? Does Leo sleep with a weapon? Best place to hide in 600 square foot apartment. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead. I stood up from my desk, my chest scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. I walked over to my front door, checking the heavy deadbolt. I walked into my bedroom and inspected the window. It was fully shut, the latch firmly secured. I was completely alone in the apartment. There was no one in the closets, no one under the bed. I sat back down at my computer, my hands trembling slightly as I refreshed the page. I told myself it had to be a sophisticated phishing attempt or a highly targeted cyber attack. Someone had hacked my router from the outside and was injecting fake search logs to terrorize me. It was the only logical explanation. I completely changed the network security protocols, set up a new 30-character password, and whitelisted only my personal devices. Satisfied that I had locked the hacker out, I finally went to bed around midnight. The next morning, I woke up early, poured myself a cup of black coffee, and immediately opened my laptop to check the logs. My heart completely stopped. Despite the password change, the mysterious device had connected again. The timestamp started exactly at 3:14 am. The first search query from last night read, "Why did Leo change the password?" My hands shook so violently, I almost spilled my hot coffee onto my lap. I scrolled down, my chest heaving as I read the subsequent searches. Does he think a password can keep me out? Low heart rate during deep sleep. How much weight can be drywall in the bedroom closet support? I slammed my laptop shut. I couldn't breathe. The implication of that last search was too horrifying to comprehend. My bedroom closet had a small, square cloth space hatch in the ceiling that led into the dark shared attic space of the old apartment building. I grabbed a heavy metal golf club from my living room, marched into my bedroom, and threw the closet door open. I turned on my phone's flashlight and pointed it upward. The white plastic hatch cover was perfectly in the place. There was a thin layer of dust along the edges that looked completely undisturbed. I pulled a heavy wooden chair into the closet, climbed up, and gently pushed the hatch cover aside. I poked my head up into the darkness. The air up there was a freezing, smelling heavily of old insulation dust and dry rot. The beam of my flashlight cut through the dark, revealing nothing but wooden beams and dirty pink fiberglass insulations. Is anyone up there? I yelled, my voice cracking with pure terror. Nothing answered, except the faint hum of the building's ventilation system. I climbed down, put the hatch cover back, and barricaded the closet doors using my heavy dresser. I was losing my mind. I decided to call the local police department's non emergency line. An operator answered, and I tried my best to explain the situation clearly, but as I spoke the words aloud, I realized how insane I sounded. I was telling a police officer that an invisible entity was googling threatening things about me through my own internet router. Sir, the operator said, her voice dripping with polite exhaustion. Unless there is a physical intruder in your home or someone is actively making direct threats to you via text or email, we cannot dispatch an officer. It sounds like your computer network has been compromised. We advise you to contact a professional IT specialist or completely reset your internet hardware. I hung up the phone, feeling completely abandoned. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in the dark, my eyes wide, staring at the bedroom door. The heavy dresser was still pushed firmly against the closet. My golf club was resting right beside my pillow. I kept my phone in my hand, watching the clock screen. 3:11 am, 3:12 am, 3:13 am. The moment the clock flipped to 3:14 am, a sudden, sharp digital chime echoed from my living room. It was the specific alert notification I had set up on my computer to signal when a new device connected to network. It was happening right now, in real time. I forced myself out of bed, gripping the golf club so tightly my knuckles turned completely white. I crept out into the dark living room, the cold floorboards freezing my bare feet. The blue light from my dual monitors illuminated the room in an eerie, ghostly glow. I crept up to the desk and looked at the live updating network log. The mysterious device was active. A new search query appeared on the screen before my very eyes. Is Leo awake right now? I stared at the glowing text, paralyzed. 2 minutes later, the screen refreshed again. Another search appeared. Yes, he is. He is standing right in front of the monitors. I stumbled backward, dropping the golf club. It hit the floor with a loud metallic clang that echoed violently through the silent apartment. Whoever was doing this wasn't hacking me from some distant country. They were watching me right now from inside this very room. I scanned the dark corners of the living room. The shadows thrown by the computer screens looked elongated and twisted. I looked toward the kitchen, then the bathroom, then back to the monitors. A new search query popped up. Look up, Leo. My neck felt entirely stiff, like stone. Slowly, with absolute dread, I tilted up my head upward, looking at the ceiling directly above my computer desk. There was a large rectangular air conditioning vent screwed into the drywall. The slatted metal grate was completely dark, but as I stared at it, the blue light from my monitors reflected off something hidden behind the metal vents. Two wide, pale, unblinking human eyes were staring straight down at me through the narrow slats. I let out a choked, terrified scream. I didn't think, I didn't grab my keys. I just turned around, sprinted to my front door, tore the tilt board open, and ran out in the carpeted hallway of the apartment building. I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of my car in the parking lot. I locked the doors, started the engine, and drove straight to a 24-hour dinner thrill miles away, where I sat in brightly lit bath, shaking uncontrollably until the sun finally came up. The next morning, I returned to the apartment building, but I didn't go alone. I had managed to convince two of my closest friends, Marcus and Dave, to come with me. I told them someone was living inside my walls. When we entered my apartment, everything looked completely normal. The living room was quiet, and my computer monitors had gone into sleep mode. Marcus fetched a screwdriver from my kitchen while Dave stood watch. Marcus climbed onto my desk chair and carefully unscrewed the metal air conditioning vent from the ceiling. He pulled the heavy grate away and shined a high-powered flashing into the dark ductwork. "Oh man," Marcus whispered, his face instantly turning pale. "Leo, you need to see this." I climbed up onto the desk beside him and looked into the ceiling. The air conditioning duct didn't just lead to the main building unit. Someone had deliberately cut open the sheet metal, creating a wide, hidden crawlway that connected my apartment directly to the hollow, empty spaces between the walls of the entire building. But that wasn't the worst part. Right inside the duct, directly above where my computer desk sat, someone had set up a small makeshift living space. There was a thin, dirty sleeping bag, a few empty water bottles, and a pile of discarded food wrappers. And resting right next to the sleeping bag was an old, cracked smartphone. It was plugged directly into an exposed electrical wire from my ceiling, drawing power from my own apartment. Dave carefully reached in and pulled the smartphone out using a towel. The screen was unlocked. We opened the phone's browser application. The active tab was locked into my router's public cached network. We scrolled through the local search history stored on the phone itself. There was hundreds of searches stretching back over 3 months. How to leave apartment pens without being hit Leo work schedule. What time does Leo go to the bathroom at night? Toxic toast of sleeping piles in coffee. My knees felt completely weak, and I had to grab onto Marcus' shoulder to keep from collapsing. This person hadn't just been watching me for a few days, they had been living inches above my head for months, tracking my every movement, learning my habits, and slowly planning something terrible. We immediately called the police. 2 detectives arrived within the hour, fingerprinting the ductwork, the smartphone, and the attic hatch. They ran the device hardware info through their databases, but the phone belonged to a prepaid account bought with cash under a complete anonymous name. The fingerprints in the system didn't match any known criminals. The property manager checked the building's master keys only to find that one of the maintenance sets had gone missing over a year ago. Whoever it was had total access to the entire building skeleton. I packed my entire life that very afternoon. I broke my lease, paid the heavy penalty fee without a single complaint, and moved all my furniture into a secure storage. I couldn't spend another second in that apartment. It's been almost 8 months since that day. I moved halfway across the country to a small town, renting a tiny, single-story house with absolutely no crawl spaces, no attics, and no central air ducts. I use a simple standalone window unit for cooling. I thought I had finally escaped the paranormal. I thought I was safe. But 3 nights ago, I noticed my smart television in living room was acting strange. It kept turning on by itself in the middle of night. It screen casting a pale blue glow across the empty rooms. Thinking it was just a software glitch, I logged into my new router's administration panel from my phone to run a routine network diagnostic check. I pulled up the connected devices list. There, at the very bottom of the screen, there was a generic, unidentifiable hardware code. It was the exact same device code from my old apartment. My breath caught into my throat, a wave of familiar, icy terror washing over me. With trembling fingers, I opened up the real time search logs for my new network. There was a single search query made at precisely 3:14 am last night. Did you really think a new state could keep me from finishing the job, Leo? I sat there in the dark, staring at the glowing screen of my phone, hearing the faint distracting sound of something heavy dragging itself slowly across the wooden shingles of my roof, directly above my head.